say Freeman, Senior Managing Director of Glass Ratner B. Riley. Hello, thank you so much for joining the conversation and having a conversation with NDTV Profit. Firstly, evening to you.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning in India. Firstly, I would like to ask you about the print which came. The US, now we are looking at a softer than expected inflation data for the month of February, which is a much sigh of relief from what has been happening in the past few months. But there are still concerns remaining on higher inflation coming up with the Trump tariffs still in place, the retaliatory measures which are now being taken over there. I want to get the overall picture from you. What is the kind of sense that you're making from these readings, and what would be the direction forward?
Well, for your viewers' benefit, what most consumers, many Americans now are gauging our economy and inflation is based on the egg index. That's taking precedent over most of the other metrics. And at 58, almost 59%, that's getting a lot of headlines. But on a serious note, what we're seeing is a slowdown in inflation, and it's still relatively high. And we've got this, I wouldn't even call it a backdrop. We have news and concerns about tariffs that are actually outweighing the perceptions of the benefits of a slower inflation rate.
Right. So, there are still concerns about the economic health of the country, and, now, what has been happening in the stock markets also, the recession concerns, the overall prints, if we see in terms of the consumer spending, that has been lower as well. So, going forward, what is your sense on the economic health of the country? Do you see that these recession concerns which are there, there could be more to this, or do you see that this is kind of exaggerated in a sense? I just want to get your sense.
Yeah, I think there's good reason to be very concerned about the impact of tariffs. There are two ways. One is if the tariffs stay in place, there is sort of a lag period. We're not going to feel it right away. It's going to take some time for the supply chain or the higher costs in the supply chain to be reflected in prices that are paid by the consumers, whether you're an industrial user or a consumer. On the other hand, just the yo-yo aspect of making a declaration of XYZ tariff and not imposing it, or changing the percentage, and just the general disruption and uncertainty that creates is very damaging to the economy. Businesses cannot make plans and based on these announcements and changes in policies every other day.
Right, absolutely. That is the overall sense that we are picking from the markets as well. But considering the softer than inflation report which came this month, but along with that, there are still concerns on the employment numbers, the consumer spending. Further, when we go at and look at the outlook for the interest rates, while this in this meeting that interest rates are going to have a status quo status, it's the June month wherein there is higher probability of a 25 basis rate cut expected. Want to get your sense on what could be the direction of the interest rates forward, as in because even if you look at what the Fed chair has pointed out, he did say that he would still wait for the implications of the Trump tariffs to be taken place to see what the direction would be.
Yeah, I believe the Fed may take a wait and see approach. There was this anticipated reduction. Maybe by the time they're ready to, make the next announcement, they'll be able to gauge some of the impacts of tariffs and to what extent they're going to have on the rest of the year. But there was this expectation of having about a 70 basis point decline. But I just think there's too much uncertainty at the moment to have a good feeling about the direction. And there's really no upside for the Fed to make a move at coming up, because again, there's a lag in the impacts to all this political stuff.
Right. Mr. Freeman, also wanted to get your sense on the direction of the Treasury yields also, because what we'd seen in last year, in the last few months, there was a spike in the Treasury yields, but from January onwards, we've seen those stabilizing. Of course, the impact of Trump tariffs also playing into that factor. Along with that,
Mhm.
even if you look at the dollar, that has come off substantially from the 110 levels it was there. So what is your sense on the direction of the yields and the dollars also when we look forward to what is the implications of all these concerns which are there?
Well, by the end of today, the dollar spot index was pretty much flat, and Treasury yields had rose about, I guess it was about 3 basis points. So not particularly strong reactions today, but I think we're just going to see we're going to see greater volatility in the near term because what we're seeing is our trade measures. Trump's making one announcement, then we're getting so-called retaliatory announcements from other countries, specific countries, plus the EU. So, day to day changes, I don't think are as significant as much as we should be looking at maybe over the next 2 weeks.
Okay, and Mr. Freeman, my final question to you is about the emerging markets as well. And now, even if you look at what is happening in China, there are still
Mm.
deflationary pressures here after the latest print came out. And while we look at India, even in India reported with its inflation numbers, and we are looking at a softer than expected numbers here as well. Just want to get your overall picture on these two emerging markets as well for the near to medium term.
Well, there's kind of different, fundamental problems, structural problems in the two countries, and China still has a tremendous overhang of bad real estate and real estate loans, and they may have a significant impact. The tariffs could have a significant impact on the Chinese economy. India is still a solid growth story. It's not going to be in a straight line. Um, but in this kind of environment, we see the rupee's been very weak, and in general, international investors take a more risk-off approach when there's just all this uncertainty going on.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. Freeman, for joining us and providing us with all that perspective on the global as well as the emerging markets. Once again, thank you so much for joining
Thank you.
NDTV Profit.